Should I be able to see Matt and Steven? Can you see me? Should I be able to see both of you right now, or no? Okay. I can hear them.
Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to Simulmedia Live. My name is Matt Collins. It's great to have us wherever you're watching, however you're watching. It occurs to me, and I know a lot of other people have had this idea. It's not original thought on my part, but with every working film, it's been harder at times, I think, to spot the breaks in time. And so there are moments where I think to myself, is it Saturday or is it Tuesday? And with each day sort of bleeding into the next, I thought it was awfully timely for the Rewatchables podcast, Bill Simmons project, to feature Groundhog Day in his most recent rewatchable movie. And for those of you who've seen Groundhog Day, immediately, of course, you're recognizing why that is a perfect movie to call attention to in these times. If you're not, if familiar with that movie, first of all, go watch it. It's a fantastic film and a great one for the times. But the premise is that a weatherman from Pittsburgh who comes to Punxsutawney, PA to catch the groundhog and whether he sees a shadow ends up reliving the same day, Groundhog Day, probably about 10,000 times. And in that course of these 10,000 days that he relives exactly the same way over and over again, he actually develops some new habits and new approaches to approaching that day. And so he starts off sort of hedonistically. He goes through a depressed phase where he recognizes that no matter what he does, he's stuck in the same spot. But then as the movie develops, he starts to focus on acquiring new skills. I'm not giving away much to say that he learns, for example, to play the piano. And that factors into the movie at the end. And so here we are. We're all kind of going through a new routine, one that has some repetition because most of us working from home. What a great time, actually, to focus on skill development, on acquiring some new abilities. I don't have the time to go and right now learn a new language or learn how to draw, take cooking classes, although all of those things sound fantastic to me right now. But what I can envision doing, what I try to do a little bit every day, is squeeze in something that might augment a skill that's valuable for the work that I do. And so in the spirit of that, we thought we would dip back into the well and for the second time bring back a guest we've had on before. He is Stephen Golis. He is a digital trainer to the television advertising industry. He led a class we did just about a year ago at Simulmedia on how to do attribution for television. You may have seen him honored by Business Insider recently as a key influencer voice in the revolution of television advertising. And so I thought, what a great time to have Stephen Gullis back. So Stephen, welcome back to Simulmedia Live, sir. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, Matt. Happy to be here. Appreciate the time.
I have to say also, Stephen, I'm springing this on you for the first time, but I don't think it'll surprise you. Since we went to remote broadcasts of Simulmedia Live,
yep,
and we've done a lot of shows. We've been cranking these things out, sometimes 3 a week. We've never had as much pre-show interest in any guest in any topic as we did with you. So clearly we have struck a nerve, whether you call it the Groundhog Day effect or people just wanting to hear from you or see you. Kudos, man, you've got a following.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've worked with a bunch of people across the industry, and I think outside of the people that I've worked with, I think this is really a topic that about people really have a craving to learn and to understand about digital. And sometimes if you're, traditionally a TV buyer or seller, it's a little embarrassing to say that you don't know much about digital. So yeah, this is a good opportunity for folks to sort of get a good sense of, the skills that they need, the things that they need to know and understand in order to be sort of just enough to be dangerous in the digital TV buying and selling world.
So, Stephen, it seems self-evident to me, the question why. Why would someone who may have spent the last 5-10 years mastering the craft of television, why would it be, valuable for that person to now acquire some digital chops too?
Sure. I think if you're talking about, if you're a buyer of linear TV, if you're a seller, clearly we live in a world now of convergence where buyers are not just buying linear, they're buying linear and OTT. And if you're selling, screen agnostic. So if you're involved in that process, it's really important to have that digital foundation, that understanding, because you're going to be in front of either digital buyers or sellers, and you want to have credibility. And you want to be able to articulate unique selling propositions. You want to articulate strategies to clients. So super important to understand, both sides of the coin, both the digital and the linear piece, because again, this is all converging.
Yes, it is all converging, and the skills required to do it all are different and varied. And by the way, Cliff, if you can you mute our third guest line? We're picking up some background noise. So I'm teasing a bit of the ending here, but we are going to have, for the first time, we're going to have a second segment on Simulmedia Live. One that's going to bring in, actually, I think, a very a neat example of how digital and television collide. We're going to be showing off a tool that actually enables advertisers to be able to plan and target and execute parts of what their television advertising strategy is through digital tools, through software. So we're going to get to that at the end. But Stephen, let's start off with you. You in our build up to this, you mentioned that there are 4 things that someone who is well versed in television should know about digital and the way digital advertising works. And we're going to go knock these things out one at a time. And let's start with ad strategies. Ad strategies in digital. What are the key things that we should know about how to develop a winning ad strategy in digital?
Yeah, I think, especially for folks that are buying TV, I think there's a need to understand not only the world of video and OTT, but also to understand the larger strategies that clients are taking in digital, whether that's an understanding of search and what's going on in search. For example, the growth of companies like Amazon and Walmart in search, if it's things that are happening in native or in display or audio, which is obviously a fast-growing piece of this. One of the things that I like to have folks really double down and hone in on, in this ad strategies bucket is really an understanding of what is OTT. It's actually shocking to me how many people I survey, and I ask, can you articulate the difference between delivery via OTT and CTV, and just some of that basic definitional stuff around the differences between OTT and CTV, and an understanding of the entire sort of OTT landscape, to me, that's some foundational information, some foundational skills and knowledge that, by no fault of anyone's own, folks need to understand. Folks don't have and need to understand. So I've found that really understanding the broader strategies advertisers take with digital, but really understanding the OTT landscape and business models, I think is incredibly important for both buyers and sellers to really understand in order to thrive in this industry.
I'm joined today by Stephen Golis. He is a digital advertising training specialist who has built a career out of helping people who come from the television industry understand how to add digital expertise to their repertoire and broadening their skill set. So you bring up a great point, Stephen. OTT or streaming video and advertising in streaming video is actually a really valuable, timely way for traditional television advertisers to develop this digital muscle. Because, first of all, if you're watching OTT, or ad-supported video on demand, on your television set, where you might also get a linear signal or a broadcast signal, whether it's through a cable box or through digital antenna, you're talking about a viewing experience and notion of targeting that is very, very similar to what a traditional linear TV planner would be accustomed to. The notion, for example, of shared viewing or over-the-shoulder viewing, which is a very different concept than when you're talking about viewing through a mobile device or even a tablet or laptop, where you can pretty safely assume that the person on the other end of that IP address is watching it and only she is watching. So the premium video experience through OTT, on the one hand, has elements of linear television that are common, but now it's activation, it's targeting, it's measurement. All of that has qualities that resemble more what traditional digital advertising is learning. So it seems to me that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that learning digital would be really much more easily done when run through the emergence of OTT. Am I right?
Yeah, I think OTT is a nice bridge to help folks understand really some of the gnarly stuff in digital. One of the philosophies I have two main philosophies when I train folks. Number one, we have to make it fun and exciting. Most folks in this industry that are taking my classes don't want to sit in a room and look at a PowerPoint. They want to be engaged and active and learning and having fun. That's one philosophy. The other philosophy is that in order to be really smart in this industry and add value to any conversation, whether that's a conversation with your clients or prospects or your boss, it's incredibly important to understand and have a good knowledge of how the pipes work. So I've been fortunate enough to spend some of my career at DoubleClick and then Google after the acquisition. And a lot of what I picked up there is a real understanding of how things like cookies and pixels and tagging and data work. And you've got to understand the mechanics of all that to really then bubble things up in a very clear and simple way to articulate, again, if you're a buyer, what your strategy is, or if you're a seller, what your competitive advantage is.
And to learn these skills, and to start to develop a digital expectation, by the way, is also going to set up that traditional linear TV buyer and planner to be more effective in television, because it will open up the concept of being able to target on a strategic target audience basis. It'll open up the concept of relying on more real-time measurement capabilities or attribution, Stephen, just like what you trained with us over a year ago. That starting to develop a sense of digital expectation can make the work that you do in linear TV that more effective, because there are options available for actually beginning to make TV work like it's digital. But you first have to have that understanding or that expectation in order to know what to ask for. And I think that's really critical. Let me invite the audience as we go. If you have questions for Stephen about any of the topics we're covering, or about things that we haven't covered but you'd like to know about, feel free to drop a question into however you're watching, whether that's on LinkedIn or on Twitter YouTube/Periscope, or if you're in Zoom, there are ways to raise your hand. Let us know if you have a question, and we'll make sure we get those to Stephen before we adjourn. Stephen, talk a bit about the second strategy, the second key thing, rather, for folks in linear TV to wrap their heads around. It's the notion of tracking and measurement in digital. First of all, how are advertisers and publishers delivering and tracking the performance of their campaigns when they run digitally, and how does that differ from how we come to think about it in linear television?
Yeah, I think on the linear side, it's actually pretty simple. It's pretty black and white. So you deliver a campaign, numbers post, it gets measured by a third party, which is Nielsen. And if you deliver on what you promised, then buyers are happy. If you don't, then there's a process of making good and ADUs and a whole process that's involved there. Digital is very, very like muddy and gray, and that's what really makes it confusing for a lot of folks. It's really teasing out and understanding what goes behind it. And again, like as I alluded to before, it's incredibly important to understand the mechanics of how all this stuff works, and to understand a lot of the process. So how does an ad go from delivery to measurement? So when you load a web page, what's actually happening in the background? And how is that ad actually getting delivered to the page, both mechanically and also from a targeting standpoint? Why do I get a particular ad on a certain day, and at the same time you may get another ad? So it's really understanding the mechanics behind that, and then also understanding, great, after a user sees an ad, how are we measuring the performance of that ad? What are the tools we're using? Are we using just our third-party ad server? Are we using a company like a Nielsen? Are we using a company like ComScore? I think one of the challenges with digital is you've got so many companies that are involved in the space in terms of targeting and delivery and measurement. It becomes incredibly complex and quite frankly, overwhelming for a lot of folks. And one of the things that I try to do is sort of demystify that and keep it incredibly simple. But the challenge is that it is very different than the way that linear is delivered and measured. And I think lots of folks need to challenge themselves. They need to be intellectually curious and want to learn about this stuff, because it's not easy. And it's not going to take one class or one session going in and learning something. This is about repetition. To your point before at the beginning with Groundhog Day, this is something you've got to do over and over again. It's a new muscle you've got to exercise. But once you do, you're in such a great position to be able to be strategic to your clients as a buyer, and to do good work for your company.
Yeah, and also I will point out that in the area of tracking and measurement, this is an area where advertisers in digital can get into some trouble, because there's people have heard an awful lot about ad fraud, and fraud can pop up in lots of different ways. But there's also there's levels of opacity, of not being able to really understand how costs are being accumulated, how much cost to ascribe to a particular campaign, which vendors are taking which cuts. And there was in fact a study that just came out, I think late last week, that showed that there's still a lot of challenge associated with understanding what's really happening with campaign performance, how to measure it, how much of it is getting siphoned away by bad actors or by middlemen who are carving into the power of your media and taking fees out. And this is an area where you're exactly right, Stephen. The intellectual curiosity is going to be really important for being able to dig underneath the hood and understand how the system works. Because ultimately, as a digital marketer, you're held to account for how it performs and also what it costs.
Yeah, exactly. The study that you're talking about, a really interesting study, I think, out of the UK, which talks about the programmatic supply chain and where those dollars are going. And if I'm a buyer at an agency that's buying now, or buying TV, but now buying across both TV and digital, and programmatic is a piece of that buy, and my client quotes that study, I've got to be able to articulate my POV on that study. And in order to be able to do that, again, you need to understand some of the mechanics behind the way that these things actually work and actually operate. And to your point before, there's a lot of opacity. A lot of opacity.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You just unfortunately you don't know. And the good news is that this is getting better over time, and I think things are becoming clearer over time. But yeah, to the extent that we can eliminate, folks or intermediaries that are not providing value in that process, I think the industry, generally speaking, will be better off.
Let's quickly zoom through the last two sections of this, and then we're going to go to audience questions, and then we've got a special treat at the very end where we're going to actually show a digital tool that helps to manage linear TV buying. And I think it's just consider it an opportunity for people who are watching this to dip their toe into the water of what's actually possible using software to make a familiar medium tick. So let's move to the third element, programmatic. What is it?
Sure.
Why is it important, Stephen?
It's a great question, Matt. So it's one of the things I ask in my class. I ask the audience, so what is programmatic? And it's so interesting because you get literally not dozens, but you get a number of different answers. And that's part of the problem, again, with digital, is that I can use the word programmatic, Matt, and you use the word programmatic. We're saying the same word, but we mean different things, right?
Right.
It's true with data also. Like I asked in one of my classes about data. I said, what is data? And data is so incredibly hard to define because everybody has a different idea of what it means. So one of the tips I actually give lots of the folks that I work with is anytime anybody says one of those words in a meeting, programmatic, data, optimization, a lot of these buzzy words, you've got to sort of stop the person that's talking to you and say, well, what did you mean by data? What did you mean by programmatic? So my definition, the definition of programmatic is really automation. And this is incredibly important because automation breeds things that are efficient and breeds efficiency across the buying landscape. So again, I'll go back to the idea of understanding the mechanics of how all this works. I use philosophy. I read a philosophy called Bloom's hierarchy, which is a sort of a training philosophy, which basically says there are different levels you need to get people to.
We just lost you. We lost you first. Yeah, you broke up just for a second after you gave a name to the training philosophy. So why don't you start?
Sure. Right. So the idea is that, listen, you can understand that DSP is demand side platform. It's very definitional, right? But to really grasp what it is, you need to understand what it does. And then once you understand it, you need to analyze it and be able to analyze it and apply it. And then ultimately, if you can teach these things, right, if you can teach about programmatic, then that's the place that I like to get people to. If you, as a buyer, can then teach your client about what programmatic is or teach them about what data is, that is the ultimate place that you want to be. But again, with programmatic, again, lots of players. What is a DSP? What is an SSP? What is a trading desk? Why are they important? What is an exchange? How does that differ from an SSP? What is supply path? I mean, there are so many, again, definitions and so many sort of underlying pieces that you need to understand. But the reality is programmatic, if you read studies, 65 to 85% of all media is traded or bought and sold programmatically. And that, is no different in the video advertising space, at least on the OTT side. And then eventually we'll see that probably moving to some of the live linear stuff as well.
And that brings us to the last topic, and that's brand safety. And so one of the things that all marketers are mindful of, at least every marketer that I know of, is this notion that I want to make sure that I'm proud of everywhere my brand appears in whatever context. Sure. And when we talk about automation and machines taking over and doing the work, there's the possibility, a risk and a fear that creeps in that my ad is going to run someplace that I don't want it to run. And so sure. Talk about brand safety in an era of digital and how do we preserve it?
That's a tough question. How do we get it? How do we preserve it? I mean, listen, I think you need to have a real understanding of where your media is running. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to having a real understanding of the properties on which it's running, making sure that it's running in brand safe environments within those properties. To me, brand safety is actually a pretty big umbrella that's inclusive of both the environment that the consumer or the brand is running in. It's also any fraud that potentially is around the delivery of those ads, whether that's things like bots or domain spoofing or all these other ways that bad actors get involved in the supply chain. It's things like viewability, making sure that your ads are viewable. So to me, brand safety is a pretty large bucket, and that's to me now is really the key answer for a lot of brands is how can you make sure that your ads are running in environments that are clean and that are safe. And again, part of it is understanding how those environments deliver ads and how measurement works. Again, it goes back to understanding a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the underlying technology to really then be able to dig in, ask the right questions, and get to a good understanding of how and where your ads are running.
Stephen, this has been fantastic, and I've been trying to hustle things along because the lineup of questions for you is building and building and building. And I want to take the last 5 minutes to get into as many of these as we can. So let's try to burn through these as fast as possible. I want to start with something we led with near the beginning. Jonathan wants to know, what's the major differences between over-the-top OTT and connected TV from the consumer's perspective? Is it the actual hardware? I have my own answer, but I'm eager to hear what you say, Stephen.
Sure. So real quick, the difference between OTT and CTV, OTT really is any content that's being delivered over the top of the cable box. So typically through an IP or an internet connection. When you talk about CTV, CTV specifically is any device or any content that's watched over your television, the television set, via a device that is connected or has internet access through that television. So 3 buckets there: gaming systems, which you can watch OTT content on, OTT devices, so Roku or Chromecast or an Apple TV, and the third is the smart television itself. So for the consumer, really no difference other than one you're watching on a TV, that's CTV, and then potentially watching on mobile and desktop, which are OTT only.
I'm very close to where you are on that. I take the TV and CTV literally. To me, CTV indicates a hardware-based experience where OTT is a software one. I can watch OTT streaming Netflix on my phone, but when I'm watching a connected TV, a lot of those applications, the software is built into an operating system that runs on the television. And so that's how I distinguish the two. But you're exactly right, Stephen. I think from a consumer perspective, it's exactly the same. I think one interesting point that Terry Kawaja makes is the notion of CTV eventually becoming converged TV, where I can mix and mingle a linear feed with an over-the-top feed, with a digital broadcast feed, a cable feed, all in one place without having to plug stuff in, switch stuff around, press too many buttons on a remote, which I think is that's an awfully sweet kind of phenomenon to imagine.
Agreed.
Let's move into another question. Jonathan, thank you so much for asking that. It's a really thoughtful question. Here's a really good question. It's right in your wheelhouse, Stephen. Do you have any recommendations on how a quote-unquote traditional person can insert themselves into the OTT space within an agency? And this person goes on to write, CTV/OTT fell to the digital side to start, and now the digital folks don't want to give that piece up. We hear this all the time. Stephen, what do you recommend?
I know. Listen, it's hard for me to make a recommendation because I don't know the way that your particular agency works. But again, I'll go back to my advice. If you want to get involved with the digital side of the business and get involved with the buying of OTT, you've got to understand how it works, and you've got to really prove that to those folks that that currently have that part of the business, that you've got the chops to do it and that you're intellectually curious. And, you got to read. It's reading. You've got to go online. You've got to read. You've got to watch videos. You've got to, you really, again, it comes down to intellectual curiosity. You got to be curious enough to want to learn. And then when you learn, you've got to prove to the folks that own that budget that, you're a valuable asset to that particular team.
I agree with all of that. I would also recommend that anyone who's interested in insinuating themselves into the OTT side of a house, if it's gone digital, is to start with the strength that you already possess, which is knowing and understanding why do advertisers invest in premium video and television advertising, linear television advertising as the anchor, where they're doing it probably with some notion of maximizing unique audience reach and doing it on a regular basis with distinctive programming that's leaned back in an environment where you're probably getting shared viewing. And with everything that I just said exists regardless of whether you're viewing that advertisement or that content through OTT, through digital antenna, through a cable box. But if you bring a a digital mindset only to a medium that, quite frankly, is a full funnel effective medium for advertising, I think you run the risk of an agency developing a blind spot in how the client is likely to be contextualizing that advertising in and among the portfolio of advertising and media that they run. So my recommendation would be start with the strength that you possess of understanding why is it that brands invest in this in the first place? What do they expect out of it? What's the value that they hope to accrue? And then bring that, because my sense is it will be additive to an agency environment that might be dominating the OTT space with digital people. I'm going to pick one last question for this session, but then what I'd like, Stephen, if it's okay with you, is just email you these questions, maybe get your take on them, and we post those to our blog if you're open?
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Okay, perfect. So we'll take this one last question, and I want to thank everybody for asking. It makes these conversations on these live streams so much better. But let's talk about, do you think, Stephen, will there ever be a streamlined process that is accepted across all partners and all buyers that will aid in the tracking and reporting process? This is great.
Never.
It's a hard one.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think the reality is if you look at from a systems perspective, I mean, you get reporting out of in digital Google, and then reporting out of Facebook, and now potentially different reporting out of Amazon, and different reporting out of Campaign Manager, which is double. So to have a streamlined process, no, it's, I think we had a streamlined process in TV because at the very beginning of TV, you had, basically three and then four networks. And so you were building, sort of from the ground up with three equal networks. And now we're dealing with different technology, different players. Listen, I wish that we can have a very streamlined process, but the reality is, being able to deal with this type of uncertainty and this type of disorganization is a skill set and an incredibly important, one to have for the future.
Thanks, Stephen. This has been fantastic. And I see there are lots of other questions that are building up. Jenny, I see your question. Christopher, I see yours. Unfortunately, we've exhausted our time with Stephen, but I promise you, Jenny, Christopher, and all those who asked and didn't get an answer, I'm going to forward these questions to Stephen. We'll get Stephen's answers to these, and then we'll post a blog, and we'll call attention to the fact that we've got these answered. So if you didn't see or get your question answered on air, you can come back and count on getting that answered in the blog. We'll also have an on-demand version of this video that anyone can watch and share. But before we let you go, Stephen, and move on to our special guest, how is it people can get in touch with you?
So you can go to my website, www.stevengolis, Steven Golis.com, as you see down there with my name. One of the good ways to sort of stay in touch is I do a newsletter that I send out every 2 weeks that recaps a lot of the digital news that's important with some commentary, some good resources. So a great way to sort of keep yourself on top of the news, as well as understand a lot of the resources and places you can go to get a lot of this information. So yeah, go to my website, sign up for my newsletter, and if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out.
Steven Golis, it's been great to have you back on. You're one of only a handful of people who have done this more than once. So I really appreciate you coming back for more. I hope we can persuade you to do it a third time sometime in the future.
Happy to do it, Matt. Thanks for having me, and good luck to everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Stephen. Take care. All right, so I had promised in building up to this session that we were going to have a little bonus segment at the very end of this, and I think it's especially appropriate for people who are wanting to know how to bring a digital sensibility to television. So late last week, Simulmedia launched a feature fairly quietly. We're starting to promote it more aggressively this week. That it really enables advertisers of all kinds to very quickly and easily get a software-based read on how many people their campaigns are reaching at any given time, how that compares to their competitors, how that layers in or how that changes when you layer in different audiences. And we thought, what a really good opportunity actually to show this capability to an audience that is wanting and hungering, clearly hungering for more information about digital. And to help me with this demonstration, I've invited our Director of Product Marketing, Grace Mayshore, to join us. And I believe Grace is on. There you are, Grace. Hello. Welcome to Simulmedia Live. Oh, we don't have your audio, Grace. I think that'll be on Cliff's end. Cliff, can we bring our audio up?
Can you hear me now, Matt?
Hear you very clearly.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've got ready to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So really excited to be on. As Matt mentioned, we just launched a new free interactive tool called Brand Insights. And as Matt also alluded to, the goal of Brand Insights is to allow advertisers to come in and quickly identify how their campaign's doing, but also all the other opportunities to reach more of their target audience. And the icing on the cake is they can also see what their competitors are up to, and so they can identify both how they're doing relative to their target reach and also how that compares to their competition. So I'd love to jump in and show you the tool and show you how you can get the most out of it.
Cool, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
So this is going to require some first of its kind maneuvering, but thanks to
there
Cliff,
we are.
I can see it. Perfect. So we're looking. This is unlike anything we've done before, Grace, with this show. We're not seeing a slide. This is not a JPEG. This is actual software.
Yeah. This is right here. This is our software. We'll let you know how you can find it. But I'm going to quickly take you through how the tool works and most importantly, how you can get the most out of it. So as you can see here, we land on a Venn diagram. And if you were to come to the site, it would also land on a randomly selected brand out of our drop down of 200, as well as an audience and a time period. And so these are the inputs you can play with. So if you wanted to, you could change the time period, which I'll do in a second, change the audience, select the brand of your choosing, and also layer on a competitor if you'd like. And what this Venn diagram is showing you is both your insight and your opportunity. So in this circle right here that I'm hovering over, we're identifying how many viewers your brand has reached on TV in the month of May. So for this example, Ancestry.com has reached 73.7 million viewers. And then we are highlighting here the great job they've already done at reaching viewers in their target audience. So we see they've reached about 15.8 million viewers in their target audience. What we identify here is the opportunity. And here is the number of untapped viewers that we can help Ancestry.com, for example, reach. So just by clicking on this, we create a form where with just a little bit more information, we can help build a proposal that actually reaches this audience that we've identified that's untapped. So if we scroll down here, this is another opportunity to request that proposal. We've also found that because we've just identified 200 brands here in this dropdown, that there are a lot of other brands that might want this information. So if they just scroll down here, they can get their customized insights just by clicking this button. A form pops up. We ask for a little bit more information so that we can start building this custom analysis. And then any brand can see for themselves, if they're on national TV, this same type of insight. So just kind of scrolling around a little bit more so you all can see what else is on the screen. Down here to your right, we have the top search brand query so far. So Overstock.com, you could click on them right here, and now you'd have that same analysis for Overstock.com. So what I want to be able to do is kind of go through a real example with you so you can see how this might change as you play with the different inputs. So for the purposes of this demo, let's pretend like I am the brand Coursera. So I'm going to click here. We know how relevant online learning is right now. So Coursera, I'm going to change the target audience. I know my target audience at Coursera is 18 to 54. Again, this is all theoretical. And I'm going to keep this April timeframe. That's what I want to check out. So in this real life example again here, if we hover over the brand, we see that I've reached 81.7 million viewers. And then I've done a really good job so far reaching my target audience with 33.6 million. But again, there's this huge opportunity here that's untapped that, if you choose to activate with Simulmedia, you have the opportunity to reach these people. And we know that reaching your target audience is more critical than ever. And so really highlighting where this opportunity is what we're trying to help brands accomplish. And so in addition to highlighting untapped opportunity, I think it's really important as we think about gaining market share during this time that we're able to layer on a competitor. So a competitor of Coursera, for example, is Masterclass. So I'd search Masterclass, I'd click it. And now here, this event has opened up even more. So we can see a couple things really quickly. We can see that while the brand has done, again, a great job of reaching that 73 million viewers, the competition has reached quite a bit more. In terms of that target audience, again, we see that the competition has reached a little bit more of the target audience. But the good news is we still have so much untapped opportunity that we can, in this instance, sort of beat Masterclass to the punch and start activating on this untapped reach so that we can gain that market share. So again, your ability to get a proposal and learn more about how you can reach this audience is really easy to do. You can click here on this Venn. Again, that custom form pops up, or you can scroll down and request a proposal here. So again, we're really excited about this tool because it's bringing to life in real time what we know folks are looking for, which is opportunities to reach more of their target audience and really gain that market share in a tough climate for everyone. So really excited to be able to put this in the hands of anyone that wants it. Again, it's a free interactive tool. You can share it, which I think is awesome. Bosses, colleagues. So all you have to do is click the share functionality, print it, or then of course here on the left, you can share it through all of your different social channels. And so we've already seen folks take advantage of this and just excited to get it in front of people.
Grace, if they want to go play this on their own, what's the destination?
Yep, you're just going to go to build.simulmedia.com. You can find that link both on our homepage. We'll direct you to it, and also on our social channels. But in addition to putting Stephen's information up on a blog, we'll make sure that you can also access our brand insights there as well.
And build.simulmedia.com suggests that there's perhaps more capabilities and without giving too much away, you got plans to add some more stuff for people to play with in the future?
Absolutely. Working hard at continuing to sort of build out functionality so that you're not just identifying reach, for example, you're identifying more things that go into building that perfect plan that you can activate on TV to make sure you're getting the most out of your spend.
Do you have a second for a couple questions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Shirley wanted to know, is it also possible to see spend levels through these Venns?
So right now, it's not possible to see spend levels. If you request more information from us, we can sort of break down a proposal and take you through it in that format. But it's possible we add spend levels as we build this out.
That's a great question, Shirley, and it is something that we're actively discussing. Sharif also had a question, and he wanted to know, can this also be applied to local markets?
So it cannot be applied to local markets. This is national linear TV advertising. And so we are focused on brands that are advertising on the national scale and finding opportunity for them through that medium.
Yeah, thanks, Sharif. Those are great questions. This is fantastic, Grace. I appreciate you walking us through this. And again, I think the context and why we wanted to feature it here made a ton of sense, because it really was what you're showing here is how software can very rapidly do things through automation that used to take days, if not longer, to go and solve for this. If I was a brand advertiser, I was at one point, but I can say that if I wanted to know what my primary competitor had done in just the last 3 or 4 weeks in terms of how many networks they were on, how much of their audience they reached, and how that varied depending on different slices of different demographics. You're talking about a project that would have taken months to complete and would have cost probably tens of thousands of dollars as a research project. And here, the software returns all that information in something approximating real time. So it's super cool. People who are familiar with TV, I think, will get a lot out of it and appreciate just how much there is going on underneath the surface. But I really appreciate you coming on, Grace, and taking us through the demo.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. We will have you back at some point, especially as new stuff comes online, so you can walk us through it. All right. So with that, I want to bring our show today to a close. Thank you all for joining. I will tease our next show. So tomorrow we have a very special guest. I'm so excited to have Esther Dyson on. Now, Esther is a longtime entrepreneur, innovator, and was, I believe, the first chairman of ICON, and has really got a very long and textured career. But these days, she's focused on health and health outcomes and creating more equitable health outcomes across the country, using tools and a long-term approach that a lot of our current healthcare and health systems have resisted. And she's going to do this a heck of a lot more justice than I am, but really encourage people who may have followed Esther or are thinking about what the current pandemic means for the long-term evolution of our healthcare system, health delivery system, and creating more equitable and positive outcomes, to tune in, because she's got so much to say. And this is a really, really important moment for how we as a country deliver health to people, especially who need it. So tune in tomorrow. Hope to see you then. In the meantime, stay safe, be well, everybody, and thanks so much for watching Simulmedia Live. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.